Bum, ba, ba, bum, 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 bum.
Welcome, Fred Child.
Thank you, Ching. How are you?
Yeah, Ganbei. The
Gumbe.
water here.
Iced
Ganbei.
coffee in
Yeah,
this hand, water in this
yeah.
hand. Cheers all around.
Yes, we're all ready. So, thank you for joining me to this episode of
Oh,
called A Conversation with Fred Child. And let me introduce you to our viewers first. Yeah, in case people do not familiar with you and your work. And so Fred Child is a famous host of American radio, classical radio music station host. Yeah, it's called APM's Performance Today. It is the most listened classical music radio station in entire United States. Yeah, doesn't matter if you're in Alaska or if you are in Maine or if you're in Vermont, you can all tune in to his talking, explaining about classical music. What a great job! And so Fred is also an is the Emmy Award winning commentator and announcer for Live from Lincoln Center, which is the only live performing arts series on television. So welcome, Fred, and Fred's resume and his credential is all written in this YouTube description. So you can read that later, and also as well as Fred's contact or some of the social media information. So, how are you, Fred?
I'm hanging in there, Ching. Through all these times, yes, hanging in there. You know, with this has been, I mean, these are crazy times for everybody in all kinds of ways, and for everybody it's different. But with support of family, my wife, who you know well, in fact, who introduced me to you, composer Wang Ji,
Right.
um, my family at home, and my little dog Pilot, who Ji got 9 years ago. And then
Uh-huh.
I joined the pack last after Pilot was already part of the pack. So with supportive family, with daily work that I'm lucky to do and love
Right.
doing. So I kind of have these anchors in my life.
Right.
But,
Do you
times
remember?
are tough.
Do you remember when? Do you remember how we met? Do you
I
remember
believe, if
the
I'm
first time?
remembering right, it was at the little place around the corner in our neighborhood called the Expat. Was that the first place we met?
You failed the test.
Oh no! Wait. Second try. No. That was not it.
New Jersey. I'll give you a hint. In New Jersey.
Was it at the New Jersey Symphony?
In no, we
Oh.
were at uh oh. We were at Yen's house for a
Ah,
concert, a house concert, right?
family of the Shanghai String Quartet in
Yes.
Montclair, New Jersey. Okay,
Right,
yes.
right. So we went to this violin piano duo concert, and it was a pair of Italian musicians, and we went to the concert, and it was a very fabulous setting at Yan and Hong Gang's house. They bought a F, we call F church, sorry. Anyway, so yeah, and then when you and Wanji, yeah. So after that, we find out we actually are neighbors, right?
Yes.
Pretty close, yeah,
You and I live in the same neighborhood on the
yeah,
upper west side of Manhattan in New York City.
right, right. So Fred,
You could
yeah,
throw your viola out the window and I
yeah.
could probably catch it.
That's a very good description.
Because I don't know if
Yeah.
people know this about you, but this is what makes you a great interviewer in the world of
Uh-huh.
music. You're a classically trained musician yourself, a string player yourself.
Thank you.
So you do the media stuff, but you've got the musical background.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm pretty lucky about that. So, but I want to talk about you. Like, I think you are one of the few people I know that I think you are very lucky to have a job. You listen to classical music. You introduce music to your audience, and you share with the world, and you're getting paid. That's just so awesome. So tell me about like how a person can become a classical music radio station. Like what kind of training and what kind of path lead you to get this fantastic work and job, or or lifestyle?
Ching, you're right. I'm incredibly lucky. I'm in an incredibly privileged position to have been now for almost 20 years the host of this radio program called Performance Today. And how I came to be here is it's a long and winding road. It began for me with piano lessons when I was a kid. When I was 6 years old, I started taking piano lessons, and that was inspired by my dad, who would come home from work. He was an aeronautical engineer. He would come home from work, and just not every day by a long shot, but there was a piano at home, and he would noodle a little bit. He had piano lessons when he was a kid. And I thought, if I play piano too, he would love that. So my initial impetus was just to try to get my dad's attention playing the piano. He does that. Maybe if I do that too. So I took piano lessons and discovered that I loved it. And even in a small way had some ability for it. I learned pretty quickly. I learned pieces pretty quickly, outgrew my first teacher fairly quickly, and wound up studying for about 10 years until I was 16. And then I had a big rebellion. I quit my classical piano lessons. I had a very difficult master class, and maybe it was a point when I needed to kind of put my nose down and work harder, but I thought, I'm not good enough to do this. I have some skill. I enjoy this, but I can see that I don't have what it takes to make a career of this. And I really think that was right. But I also turned that into kind of a reaction against classical music. And at age 16, I joined the jazz band in high school, started playing guitar, joined some rock bands, started playing drums in a punk band, moved away from classical music. Then I went to Oregon State University to go to school. My family was, and my mother still lives in Portland, Oregon. That's where I did most of my growing up. So just stayed in state, went to Oregon State University. There's a student-run radio station at Oregon State University. And as an undergrad, I really had no idea what I wanted to do or what path I wanted to be on. I enjoyed math classes and science classes and philosophy classes, but I hadn't yet declared a major. And then there's this student-run radio station, and I went and I got a Wednesday morning jazz shift on the student-run radio station. It was just a fun thing to do on the side. And several years went by, and I did some news on the student-run radio station as well. I applied for a job at Oregon Public Broadcasting because I loved listening to radio already. And it didn't even occur to me as a career option. And if somebody had told me what I'd be doing 40 years later, I'd be like, you're crazy. No way. Impossible. But then it was just kind of one thing at a time. I applied for a job at Oregon Public Broadcasting. They turned me down. I asked why. They said, you're not professional enough. I thought, well, what does that mean? And I listened very carefully then to what my favorite broadcasters were doing. And this is back when Noah Adams and Susan Stamberg were the hosts of All Things Considered, and Bob Edwards on Morning Edition. And I realized what they were doing that I was not doing was they were being themselves. They were just talking. And I had this idea that I had to put on an FM radio voice and kind of be in what I thought an FM radio personality should be. And here's some music by Beethoven or whatever. And I spent a year unlearning that and trying to become comfortable enough to just talk. And then I went and applied for the same job a year later, and I got it. And started working at Oregon Public Broadcasting, and Performance Today as a program existed already at that point. Martin Goldsmith was a longtime host for more than 10 years. Martin was the host of PT. And I would be the local, they call it a board op. I would be just making sure the show went on the air. I would come on during the breaks and give the local weather and what's coming up next. And I would just sit and listen, fascinated and learning about music. And I got back into classical music at that point as a listener, as a lover of the art form, just as a listener. And I spent a lot of free time in the record library reading liner notes and listening to music. And that's where I learned about repertoire, was from a library with 25,000, back in those days, LPs, and they were just beginning to get CDs.
Yeah, LP.
And reading liner notes, and one thing would lead me to another. Oh, who's this pianist? Andras Schiff. I've never heard of Andras Schiff. Man, I love the way he plays Bach. Who's this pianist? Marta Argerich. Oh my goodness, her romantic stuff is amazing. And then that might lead me to a composer, to a conductor, to an ensemble. So I kind of scrabbled together this musical education about today's scene by looking at all these LPs. Then I started filling in on shows and hosting shows when the regular hosts were gone. And to me, I already was in absolute wonder of what I was doing, because I was on Oregon Public Broadcasting, statewide network in my home state. My old high school friends could hear me on the radio. My mother and grandparents and their friends could hear me on the radio.
Yeah.
And then it was, a whole nother series of kind of accidental steps. I moved to New York when I was 30 years old, not for a job, but following a relationship at that point. The relationship didn't last long, but I wound up working at WNYC in New York City. And that was a wonderful job. And that immersion in the New York arts and music scene was completely eye-opening. Every step of the way, each step, I went through a similar process of tremendous self-doubt and insecurity and being, okay, Peter principle, I've risen beyond my capabilities and everybody's going to find out soon. But then, determinedly learning and listening and what can I do better? And I wound up hosting a daily live performance and interview show on WNYC in New York in the 90s. And then Martin Goldsmith left as the host of PT. And my friends at NPR, the show at that point was produced and distributed by NPR. They came to me and said, who would you recommend as our next host? And I had half a dozen people who I thought were really good on the air, and I gave them a list of names. And they spent about a year auditioning people and trying some things out. And a year later, they called me back and said, well, what about you? And it was my dream job. Like I could not say no. And so that was the fall of 2000. I started hosting PT at that point in Washington, D.C., the studios of NPR. And did that from Washington, D.C. for a little over 6 years. NPR wanted to get out of the business of broadcasting classical music. The show moved networks, a very unusual move, even in the world of public radio. So NPR created the show way back in 1987. It had a series of hosts, but after literally 20 years, 2007, the show changed networks and moved from NPR in Washington, D.C. to APM, American Public Media in St. Paul, Minnesota. I moved with the show. And so I've been incredibly lucky and continue to be incredibly lucky to be plugged into a world that I love as a listener, as an observer of the classical music scene, and not just to listen to the great music of the past, which I do enjoy doing, but also to explore the creativity that's happening in this world today, both in the form of amazing new interpretations of music that's been around a long time and new music being created by living composers. So watching the way this tradition is growing and changing and evolving every day, all the time, in cities large and small across the country, I feel tremendously lucky to be plugged into that as an observer, on top of which I get to share some of my favorite discoveries and performers. I've been extraordinarily privileged to travel to a lot of places where this happens, where music happens. You're wearing a Jackson Hole sweater, I think.
Yeah.
I got to go several times to the Grand Teton Music Festival based there in Jackson Hole.
Yeah.
And just, I mean, you said it from at the very beginning that I'm very lucky to have this job. And part of what you asked was how can a person do this?
Right.
And
Right.
the honest answer is I don't know because my track to this was unplanned. I was in the right place at the right time a lot of times in a row, and I've been incredibly privileged every step of the way to be considered for each of the next steps.
Speaking of your program, I did watch the performance today, your website. Yeah. So it's very handsome. It's very nice. And say I saw you have sorry, June 13th, hour 1, hour 2, and so people can go back to listen to it, right? Even if they don't, they so like, because they don't really know exactly, like you don't say I'm going to be in New York at 14 p.m. or this program is going to be it at each state. It depending. Tell me a little bit, how does the programming go? Like, is it randomly people, if they just want to listen to you, or they just go on to website to find what works interesting? Because another fact is I find it very interesting. I know Bruce
Adolph.
Yeah, Adolph, and he did this once a week. He just got piano puzzle, and he would play something out of some classical works, and then having audience to guess what it is. And I think it's all awesome idea of you guys, whoever comes up with this idea. It's like you're integrate with your audience. You want them to participate to your program. And so tell me a little bit about how, tell us people how to use your website to listen.
Yeah, the website has taken on a lot of different functions over the years. We're at our foundation and historically have been based around being a daily national radio broadcast, a literal FM radio broadcast that we send out from first NPR and now from APM to public radio stations around the country. So people can tune in on their local public radio station. Not every station carries us, but we're on about 270 stations around the country. And each station can decide when the show fits best in their broadcast day. So in Georgia, we're on 9 to 11 a.m. In Minnesota, we're on early afternoon, 1 to 3 o'clock. In other places, we're on in the evening. Some places we're on overnight. So I can't start a show by saying good morning because it's on a different time of day on every different station. And now, of course, the website also serves as a repository for the show archives. The audio archives are up there for 30 days after broadcast. So if you go to performancetoday.org, click on episodes, you get 30 days worth of archives that you can listen to anytime you want. Information about all the music we're playing, which the vast majority of is not from commercial CDs. It's recordings you literally cannot hear everywhere else because we've spent 35 years nearly cultivating relationships with artists, venues, producers, managers, places where concerts happen, and people send us their concert recordings. So a Beethoven symphony, a Mahler symphony, which the Grand Teton Music Festival did every year for 10 years. Donald Runickel's conducting this all-star American orchestra in the middle of the Teton Mountains. There's no place else to hear that. Those recordings are not released commercially, but they send it to us to include on our show, along with the LA Philharmonic and the Buffalo Philharmonic and a bunch of other American orchestras and lots of chamber music venues across the country and around the world. You know, over 3 decades and change, word gets around, hey, there's this little American radio show, they'll broadcast your stuff. And we're very fortunate, again, that people send us a lot of concert recordings. We select music. Actually, 2 of my colleagues do most of the music selection. Suzanne Schaefer and Megan Oglesby pick most of the music. And then my job tends toward, what am I going to say about it? What do I want to say about this piece, this performance, these performers, the place where this concert happened, the larger cultural significance of this piece or this performance or in this cultural moment? Are there people I want to interview and bring into the conversation? So my official title is host and senior editor. So I'm kind of focused on the editorial side of the show. And I'm very lucky to have a staff of half a dozen folks to work with. It's not just me. It's about half a dozen people. And radio is funny this way. It comes across on the radio or from the website as if it were just me. It's not. It's half a dozen talented people behind the scenes helping choose the music and taking concert recordings that may or may not really sound good yet and massaging the audio production of the recordings. And then all the other things that have to go into making a daily national broadcast. So I'm very lucky to work with a great crew on the PT team and to be the voice, well, and now the face of the show, because we're transitioning too from being radio to more visual media. So I have a lot to learn from you, Ching, about the use of visual media.
Thank you. I have a little bit myself has fascination of radio. Speaking of you became a announcer in your university. I actually was a radio announcer in middle school, in high school. Yeah. And I because in high school those days, it was, long time ago during the Cultural Revolution. Every morning, me and my co-host, which is a guy, he has a really beautiful voice, like a really bass, bass very low, and we actually make announcement to the entire school, and we read Mao Zedong's book to the
Little Red Book, of course.
Yes,
yes. The Cultural Revolution.
Yes, absolutely. We would read like one chapter or something. I remember that.
So you would stand in front of a microphone with the book,
a very small room has a microphone, and it broadcasts into the entire school.
Right.
I don't know exactly how big the school, but it's like one of the facility used to be one of the best school in Shanghai. It's called Girls' School Number 3. But during Cultural Revolution, girl and boy all go to the same school, so they don't separate. A long time ago, that's what Song Qingling, Song Meiling, and whatever the Chiang Kai-shek's wife, their girls go to the school. It's a very famous school. But anyway, so that's my experience of a radio announcer. And then the other is my mom is a pianist. She graduated from conservatory, Shanghai Conservatory, and she was sent. In China, you don't go audition for a job. Those days, government sent to you, or after your graduation of school, you are being sent to work. So she was sent to assigned to Shanghai Broadcast Orchestra.
Oh wow!
Yeah. Wow. So I grew up with them, because I would go, visit my mom. I would stay in the, they have babysitting facility in the Shanghai Broadcast Company. So anyway, I thought throw that in. So I'm always fascinated with not just the music, but I think of voice as itself, as like voice over as art. I was thinking in long time ago. I don't know if your wife remembers that we used to watch foreign films, but all the foreign films were translated voice over by Chinese voiceover actors. So they all speak Chinese, but sort of like in a Western way, in a very artificial way,
Dubbing the
Yeah,
American
dubbing.
movies. Yeah.
Yeah, very strange. But your voice, is like your voice is so creamy and so inviting, and it is so much remind me of when we were young. We watched those foreign films and they speak Chinese, but with a foreign flavor. Anyway, so this is segue of it's a more statement, but I have a question for you. Like, do you have to train your voice much, or do you need to practice how to talk? How does this? Do you have to preserve your voice not to eat too much spicy? Like, how do you take care of your voice? That's your instrument.
That's a great question, and I don't know if I've ever been asked that question. I love that, because this is like this is my instrument right here. Just the way my wife Wang Ji, the composer, says, "This is my instrument." Well, for me, it's this. And yeah, I do have to take care of it.
Yeah.
During the winter, I'm very aware of not getting too cold, and I wake up in the morning and I drink some warm water even before the coffee. I'll drink some just warm water just to kind of warm things up a little bit. And I wake up in the morning in the winter, and often I have some congestion, so just try to clear that out. So, and I kind of drive my wife a little crazy. I'll walk around just talking to myself in the morning, just to warm up the instrument,
Right.
Just to warm things up, and maybe take a warm shower, help warm things up.
Yeah.
It can be very dry in New York City during the winter, so a warm shower, get some humidity in there. During the spring, I have allergies, so I'll try to just do the over-the-counter allergy medicine, or even better yet, just take nothing except some warm water and maybe the morning coffee. But yeah, it is something I think about on a daily basis. And in terms of training, I wish I still had cassette tapes, my early air check cassette tapes to play for you. I would completely embarrass myself. Because when I started at the student radio station at Oregon State University, it was called KBVR because it's the OSU Beavers, the Oregon State University Beavers. So KBVR was the student-run radio station. And I until recently, until the last move, I think, I still had some cassette tapes. And I had this whispery little voice, and I was so scared of talking on the microphone, and that was kind of a little bit high pitched, and it was all kind of a very long process of getting comfortable just talking and kind of settling into a voice. Singers will cultivate a voice. They have the voice up here, the nasal voice, the throat voice, the chest voice, and maybe even deeper if you're a baritone or bass. And I love like the old time guys in radio who have the big barrel voice that's so resonant, feel like you're in a concert hall just hearing their voice. I've always kind of admired that, but that's not me. I just I'm just kind of this middle tenory, baritone range. So I just try to be relaxed, just try to breathe, and just talk.
Can you just give us a demonstration? Like you were supposed to play your ukulele for us, and you forgot.
Oh yeah, I forgot to bring the ukulele. I do have some vocal warm-ups that I do almost every day.
Now show me. Can I?
Yeah, I mean, some of it is just walking around talking.
Yeah.
But I've also I have trouble with certain consonant sounds like S, T, and the funny combinations of S, T. Sometimes my tongue gets tripped up in the middle of that.
Yeah.
N, S, T, nst, 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 which makes it so that saying performance today can sometimes be tricky for me because the way the first word ends and the second word begins, nst, it sometimes trips me up, and I have to say that 20 times a day. So a friend of my wife's, a theater guy named David McKenna, told me this tongue twister: a box of Bix. See, I already messed it up. A box of biscuits, a box of mixed biscuits, and a biscuit mixer. A box of biscuits, a box of mixed biscuits, and a biscuit mixer. A box of biscuits, a box of mixed biscuits, and a biscuit mixer. I say this every day. I say this every morning.
Wow. Wow.
And then I even added to it and tried to make it more complicated. A box of Bisquick, a box of mixed Bisquick, and a Bisquick mixer. A box of hibiscus, a box of mixed hibiscus, and a hibiscus mixer.
Wow.
So these sounds that have the S sound and some T sounds.
Do you know some Chinese ones?
Oh, well, this is where we need to get my wife Wang Ji involved, because she knows the Mandarin tongue twisters, and I'm sure you do too.
I know. Can I show you one?
Please.
Okay. So it says, I need to translate into English first because otherwise it's not funny. You know what I mean? Oh, okay. From Southern came a cripple. He hold orange in his bag. On the road, there is a eggplant. You see, this doesn't make any sense because it's in English, right? So it's not rhyming. But in Chinese,
it's all about the sounds. Yeah.
But the eggplant, and he stepped on the eggplant, and he slide. He fell down, and something like that. Okay, so you have to visualize this. Okay. Are you ready? Excuse me. 南边来了个瘸 ，OK， 南边来了个瘸子，身上背着茄子，地上一个橘子。Sorry. I have no microphone when I'm learning how here. I don't have a microphone. Yeah， 南边来了个瘸子，身上背着茄子，地上一个橘子，绊倒了瘸子，瘸子起来追茄子。That's it.
Oh, that is so much harder than a box of biscuits.
No, I think that the biscuits, it will be hard for me. Yeah, certain words I still cannot pronounce. Like, you know, there's a jewelry store called Schwa. I never know how to pronounce. You know, the crystal jewelry store. You know what I'm talking about? The crystal Austria crystal Schwa. Yes, I don't know how to pronounce that.
All right, so when you need to say Swarovski, just call me up and I'll say it for you. And when I need to say that tongue twister about the guy coming and the eggplant and all that stuff, then I'll call you and you can do that one for me, and I'll just say Swarovski for you, and we got a deal.
Yeah, deal. So now also, other than the tongue twist, do you need to like say like a singer, you know, they make these noise or sing, other than saying words? Do you have to like warm up your throat
in the instrument
vocal way?
Generally not.
Okay.
Although when I've sometimes narrated, there are musical works that include narration, and I've been very lucky to be invited to do some of those.
Yeah.
And I get kind of extra nervous when I'm doing that. And I want to make sure my diction is right, and I remember all the words and all the sounds. So there have been some times when I've walked around on stage before a concert, just kind of partly mumbling to myself, but also doing what you were just showing us. Getting all the muscles loose.
Yeah.
So it's not part of my daily routine, but sometimes it helps me if I'm nervous about a performance. Sometimes it helps me work through that and just kind of reassure myself that all the muscles are in working order.
Right. Now, so how do you have an example of some kind of a text in front of you that like when you read or interview your guests, what is the preparation like? And
Mm.
when you do it, do you talk the way different from you're talking to me right now?
Mm. You know, I'm not the most objective person about whether I'm the same or different. That's a,
Hmm.
you know,
Okay.
folks who are watching might have
Okay.
more about that than I do.
Okay.
Um, uh, Sometimes people tell me, "Oh, you sound just like you do on the radio in real life," and to me, that's a high compliment. That's like when I was describing my transformation as a university broadcaster, that's what I was aspiring to just
Hmm.
be myself, to just use my
Hmm.
regular voice. So that's what I aspire to. I know there are times when, kind of like I'm doing now, I might purposefully slow down the rhythm a little bit. If there's a
Hmm.
point that feels like it needs a little bit of an emotional moment, I might
Hmm.
change my pacing. I might get a little closer to the microphone and talk a little more softly.
Hmm.
Uh, um, but I am looking at least at notes. Sometimes I'm reading at specific words I've written if I want the wording to be exactly right.
Hmm.
Sometimes it's more like bullet points, and I'll just kind of dance my way through the bullet points.
Hmm.
Sometimes the audio engineer, I'm always working with an audio engineer, and sometimes Evan or Craig or Liz or whoever it is will say, I need 19 seconds here.
Hmm. Hmm.
Uh, so, okay, I've got to talk for 19 seconds about
Hmm.
Mikhail Glinka or uh, about whoever the pianist or violinist happens to be.
Hmm.
So I'll just think for a moment and then just do it. And if I don't get it the first time, well, we're not live, so I get to do another try.
Yeah. Another
We
question.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Sorry. Finish. Finish.
Oh, we used to be live, like live to the national satellite from
I
9
see.
to 11 Eastern time.
I see.
Um, we stopped that because the satellite time itself cost about $150,000.
Oh my God.
So we
Wow.
just started recording a day in
Oh,
advance,
I see.
just to save that six-figure amount of
Yeah.
money.
By the way, is American Radio in performance today? Is this a private company or is like a so-called, you know, non-profit?
It's a nonprofit, just like almost all public media companies, public radio stations, public TV stations. It's a not-for-profit organization. Um, Originally a broadcaster, a radio company, now thinking of itself as a media company, hence the name American Public Media.
Mm,
Uh, Way back when, there was American Public Radio, but
mm,
now it's American Public Media because it
yeah,
produces podcasts and videos and things on a lot of different platforms. And 10 years from now, maybe platforms that don't even exist yet. So hence
yeah,
the name American Public Media, APM. Um, so
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
APM produces and distributes the show. Yeah.
Now I noticed I listen to a lot of NPR, and of course I now know you. Then I will notice it's you, but uh, when I listen to the WNYC now, I notice the announcers has they say so beautifully, like in French or Italian or some German stuff. So, do you need to learn foreign languages to be a good announcer?
Mm. Oh man, another great question. Yeah, in the world of classical music, it doesn't hurt until it does. And this is a fascinating, never-ending debate to me in the world of classical music radio folks.
Mm,
How true should you be to the original language? And some people are kind of absolutists about that. And I
mm,
get emails and phone calls from people who say, that's not the way a Czech would say that. Or you're saying that the Czech way, and this is a Slovak composer, and here's the distinction between those two, and you need to know this. and please, 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 next time you say this, get this right. But I'm also aware of a couple of things. I'm speaking to an American audience, a primarily English-speaking audience, and what I'm saying needs to be comprehensible to that audience. So I don't know. Even as I'm saying that, I'm aware I could use that as a bit of a cop-out, but like I don't speak Russian. I don't say Pyotr Ilyich Tchaikovsky the way a Russian would say it. Rachmaninoff, Prokofiev, Glinka. I don't say any of those the way a Russian would say them, let alone, I mean, the kind of core languages of the Western classical tradition as it grew up of Italian and German and French. But then there's Antonin Dvorak, and so do I need to learn some Czech to say Dvorak's name correctly? You know, Aaron Copland, one of his most famous pieces, he called Appalachian Spring. And I have a recording of Aaron Copland talking about it and talking about Appalachian Spring. Well, somebody called me from Boone, North Carolina, the home of Appalachia State University in the Appalachian Mountains, and said, that's not right. It should be Appalachian Spring. Okay. The composer said it one way, but the people who live there say it a different way.
Right.
Is there an authority on that?
Yeah.
Now, more and more composers and performers come, and this is a fantastic development, and we can talk about the meaning of this too, but there are more and more composers and performers coming from non-Western countries into what was originally a Western tradition. So people from China, people from Japan, people from Korea, people from Southeast Asia, people from Africa. And those names, if I were to try to say a name in Mandarin or Cantonese, it would be wrong. I would not get it. I would butcher it. So I don't think it's the most important thing to necessarily honor the original language. At the same time, it's important to know how it might be said in the original language. We can kind of transliterate it for an American English-speaking audience. But it's always a balance for me. So when somebody says, that's not the way Leo Janacek said his name, like, well, I'm not him. And I'm speaking to a different audience than he had in a different time and a different place. And I don't want to butcher something, but actually the example that comes to mind is we had the South African vocal group join us in our studios, Ladysmith Black Mambazo. And many of them, not all, but many of them are Zulu. And many of them speak, and many of them are Xhosa. And even that word in the original language has a click sound, which is not a part of any European language. But if I were to try to make that click sound as part of the name, it just sounds wrong. It just feels wrong. So we had them in our studio a couple times. The first time they came, I practiced for days saying their names with the click sounds. And the second time, several years later, I thought, no. And I did not include the click sounds the second time it appeared. So it's a fascinating question, Ching, and I'm a total nerd about that kind of thing, about language and pronunciation. And for me, it's always a balance. But I took some German lessons in school. When I travel in Europe, because of connections to English and other languages I've picked up along the way, I can sometimes pick up enough of a local language to be a little bit conversational, but then as soon as I leave, I forget it again. So I certainly do not speak Italian in any way that's meaningful, or French. German I can get by, but that's about it. And now every language on the planet contributes to this tradition that, for better or worse, we call the classical music tradition. So I don't think it's necessary. I think it's good to have an awareness of that, but I don't think it's necessary to speak that. And in fact, when I
Mhm.
hear an American English speaker sounding like a Russian and then like an Italian and then like a Czech,
Mm,
it
mm,
sounds to me a little affected.
mm, mm,
And that's just me as a
mm.
listener.
Yeah, great. Let's talk about your other musical
Hmm.
accomplishment. You have been on stage with the famous guitarist Sharon Isbin, and also you played like four-hand duel with Andrew. And how do you say his name?
Andre
Andrew
Michel Schub.
Michel Shu. And then you also were a work on as an actor in a video commissioned for partita for solo violin by Philip Glass, and I happen to have that CD, and
Oh,
it's awesome. And even my son loves this music, his music,
mhm.
his violin sonata partita. So tell us about these sort of off the radio, uh, you're on stage now, you're now behind the stage. How do you transform yourself from a behind the scene person, now you became on stage?
I love doing that, first of all, and I feel very lucky to have gotten to narrate um, pieces like Igor Stravinsky's The Soldier's Tale, L'Histoire du Soldat, which is for a 7-piece musical ensemble and dancers and a narrator. And I've gotten to be the narrator for that for several performances and even a CD recording. It's so fun. uh, Hosting a radio show is a funny thing because I sit in a room literally by myself. And yet I'm recording my voice to go out to about 1 million people every day.
I
It's,
sorry, may I ask a question?
yeah, yeah.
Do you, when you do recording by yourself in your own room, are you very animated or are you not? Like, I cannot imagine like what you look like. Because right now you're talking to me, you're smiling, right? But when you're by yourself, you have nobody to smiling to. So how does that go?
Although every day when I record, I do a video link up with one of our audio engineers at APM
Okay.
because they have to time all my voice tracks and they have to be quite exact to fit in the time structure of the show. And they also kind of double check me. Did I say something right? Did I fumble a word without realizing I fumbled a word? So they're kind of producing the recording session at the same time. And just like you and I are looking at each other right now, Ching, it's a lot of days it's me and Evan Clark or me and Craig Thorson or me and Elizabeth Iverson or whoever's in the audio chair that day. I actually do have one person I see
I
and
see.
then talking to. It's not just me turning on the laptop and recording by myself. There's
Mm,
one other person there with me, and that is kind of crucial to my experience
mm,
because I get immediate feedback. Like,
right.
this is, somebody might say, "Mm, it just wasn't the right tone and pacing for this story," or we might talk about it. We just came out of a story that's very upbeat and lively and fast, but you kind of kept that same intonation going into this story, which
Mhm.
is more reflective and includes a sense of loss or longing. And why don't you think about doing that again? So I have an audio engineer who's also a producer there with me, and I'm again tremendously lucky because most people doing radio are literally in a room by themselves, and especially now when everybody's working from home, working remotely,
Mhm.
a lot of radio hosts are literally in their closet by themselves.
Right.
I'm very
Right.
lucky to have that connection when
Mhm.
I'm recording.
Right. And then so you were I interrupted you. You were talking about then on stage and
Oh, I love it. I love it. I'm it's not my career. It's not my daily profession. I kind of dabble in it, but I love getting up on stage, sometimes next to some of my musical heroes, uh, and getting to read words that are part of musical compositions right along with them and become part of the creation of a musical performance. Oh man, it's just thrilling. Plus, there is an auditorium full of people, and seeing their faces and that moment by moment feedback of what's working and what's not working, or even just doing a talk. I host events or just do talks for musical organizations or others. I have come to treasure that the look in the eyes, when you lose people when they start looking down and thumbing through their program notes or looking at their watch or talking to their spouse.
Yeah.
And feeling the flow of energy that way. I love that. And I don't do it every day, but I really enjoy when I get a chance to do that.
Yeah. That's
And even
wonderful.
just watching you, Ching, like I notice that you are very good about being on camera and staying centered and keeping your head still. And I kind of flail around because I'm not used to being on camera. I'm used to being on a microphone without the visuals mattering. So I use my hands when I talk and I move around, and I'm just beginning to learn to use the visual media and learning from you and learning from my wife, Wang Ji, who's also pretty good at that.
Right.
And learning to like not move, learning to sit still.
Yeah. No, you're doing great. I even watched a section, your live streaming the other day. So I was watching your camera. I actually think you and Wanji did a good job. You're very steady. You know, you try to frame the necessary angle. So I appreciate. Now, speaking of what's interesting, when we were sitting, right, I've been doing this talk for a while, for 3 months now, and I bought a new what do you call, webcam. So it's sitting on top of my computer. So it's like a two inches actually higher than my computer camera. So that means I'm looking at you right now. Actually, I'm looking at the blue dot of my camera, but you are actually here. When I'm looking at you here, right? So that looks like my eye is going low looking at you, but it's more comfortable like if I just talking to you that way. But actually I cannot really see your expression because it's like your face and my camera has 4 inches away, so all these things are learning. We are learning how to use this camera.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I've kind of gotten in the habit. My wife and I do a lot of Zoom hangouts with our friends.
Okay.
And I noticed the same thing. Like I look at them, but then when I'm looking at them, then it looks like I'm looking down and I don't like it. So then I kind of got in the habit of looking at the green dot where the camera is, which makes me look kind of more animated, and I kind of pop out of the camera because I'm making eye contact directly, but then I don't see the faces I'm talking to.
Yeah. So that's kind of weird. But anyway, we're all learning the new thing. Now, I only knew you for about a year now, right? A little bit over a year. And we did quite many things. We had a meal together. We went to concert first time, and we would, march on the street together and did this and that, coffee together. I had no idea you were even more colorful. That you are, I know you are a climber, a mountain climber with your wife, and then you also were certified scuba diver, and you were certified driving a plane. You're a pilot. Your dog's name is a pilot. So and then I told my friend, I said, please watch today. I have a talk with Fred, and when she saw my description of you, and she's like, wow, all the things that he did, those are not cheap. It's funny. So tell us a little bit of your hobbies.
Yeah, before I lived in New York, I used to have money. Now I live in New York. Well, I mentioned earlier that my dad was an aeronautical engineer, and
Okay.
part of what I got from him was the love of music, but also a love of flying.
Mm.
And I just kind of knew, even from the pretty early age, that eventually I would get my pilot's license.
Mm.
And again, I was very, very lucky. When I was a student at Oregon State University, there was a student flight club.
Mm.
And somehow they had a sweetheart deal with the little local airport in Corvallis, Oregon, where
Mm.
we poor students got a much cheaper rate on
Yeah.
hourly plane rental. I mean, we're talking about the little two-seater Cessnas, and they had some other planes, but I mostly flew the Cessnas,
Uh-huh.
uh, and cheap rates for instructors.
Yeah.
And I mean, this was 30 years ago,
Yeah.
so there's also the inflation, and insurance has gone way up for private pilots too, and
Yeah.
insuring the planes themselves.
Yeah.
So I was very, very lucky to have access to that at a time when it was relatively affordable. I mean, I was making barely $20,000 a year, and I'd saved up just enough to kind of scrape through the training. I couldn't do it fast because I had to like save up for each lesson and each plane rental, but I
Mm.
was lucky to be able to do it
Wow.
and to have access to those planes relatively cheaply. So yeah, I mean, yet another way in which I have been extraordinarily privileged in my
Yeah.
life to
That's
get
yeah.
that license, and then to be able to just drive to the airport,
Mm.
park the car, walk into the hangar,
Mm.
go to the little lockbox, take the keys to an airplane,
Mm.
walk out to the airplane, do the little check, the pre-flight check you always do, and
Mm.
then drive it out to the runway and take off.
My God. Oh
It
my
was it
God.
was it was mind-blowing that I was
I love
able
that.
to do that, and I haven't done it for years and years. It's not something I'm
Yeah.
active with these days, but
Uh-huh.
I feel incredibly lucky to have done that in my
Yeah.
life.
Yeah. So what about scuba diving?
That was a pretty brief episode.
Okay.
Uh, a girlfriend and I decided it was something we wanted to do some
Yeah.
years ago, and we did it together, and we got our certification, and we took one trip together and
Oh,
went
that's
scuba
wonderful.
diving, and I haven't
Yeah.
done it since. But that
Yeah. Yeah.
that was enjoyable too. That I mean, not inexpensive, but cheaper than getting a pilot's license for sure.
Right. 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 And you're avid mountain climber. You guys go to different mountains, right? Real
Yeah,
mountain, not
yeah.
just the climb club with the walls.
Right, and yeah, now all the indoor climbing gyms are closed anyway.
Yeah.
But yes, my wife Wang Ji and I, in addition to connecting over music, have
Mm.
connected over a love of the outdoors. And our
Mm.
relationship was cemented partly by a backpacking trip we took in California, in the mountains of California. And I had been doing some rock climbing and introduced her to rock climbing. And it was as if she had been doing it her whole life. Like she took to it so quickly. And
Mm.
she in technical terms, I mean, she is a better climber than I am. She has better
Mm.
footwork, she has better posture and weight control on the rock.
Mm.
She's a better climber than I am. But that's
Mm.
something that we love doing together too, is
Yeah.
getting out on the rock, on the mountains, sometimes just short little crags within an hour or two of New York City. But when we can, we well, like I was hosting some events at the Grand Teton Music Festival in Jackson Hole, Wyoming.
Yeah.
We climbed the Grand Teton, a substantial multi-day well, for slow climbers like us, a multi-day climb. Uh,
Uh,
and we're always looking to improve our skills and build friendships with climbers. And actually, the big outdoor climbing area, an hour and a half north of New York City, is set to open up. I believe it's on the 22nd.
oh,
And the Mohawk
sweet.
Preserve. So we're
Oh
looking
yeah.
forward to doing more outdoor climbing this coming season too.
Yeah. So during the pandemic, and I I see you and Wanji appeared on Facebook, and you did this fantastic Indian dance together. How much practice you have to do to be so synchronized?
Oh, well, this is something that each of us, Wangji and I, independently enjoyed as audience members, both
Oh,
the classical music tradition of India and the classical dance. And when I lived for 10 years in Minnesota,
yeah.
there's a terrific family-based company called Ragamala
Yeah.
in the Twin Cities, in Minneapolis, uh, who are deeply trained in the tradition of, it's called Bharatanatyam, one particular dance form.
Mm.
And Xi actually was the first to take a lesson from our friends in Ragamala. But then now we live in New York, and there are some wonderful dancers and teachers in New York. So Xi began taking lessons in person. I went just to watch or to drop her off and pick her up.
Yeah.
And they were like, you could do this too. I was like,
Mm. Mm.
okay, I'll give it a try. And that too is something that we enjoy doing. And
Yeah.
like anything else, I mean, the more you do it, the better you get. And I just want to be clear, we are absolute beginners. I mean, this is an art form as highly developed as the Western classical music tradition, with as much subtlety and much longer history, as a matter of fact. So we are absolute beginners, but we love doing it. We love taking it in as audience members and trying a few basic steps and a few basic patterns. And we love doing it. And it's fun to shoot a little video and sync up a few steps, but we're total beginners in what is a deep, rich art form. And we're taking it in as audience members and learning a little bit about how to do it and what goes into it. And plus we just love movement. We love being physical. And, since the middle of March, we've been cooped up, and it's been nice to be able to move a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. So I have so many questions for you still about your being a being an announcer. It's like, first of all, can you find something you can read to us, like pretending you're in the studio, just like read one line or two lines? I want to see like how you work.
Well, let me pull up. I can go to another page on my
Okay, computer.
laptop here.
Mhm.
So, well, let's see. What was today is the 5th.
Pretending I'm your producer.
Yeah. Yeah. So, yes, you could, I can read this and you can critique me. Tell me how I could do this better. So let's see. Okay, let's close that window and open this window. What was on the air today? The very first thing on the air today. Okay, so 2-hour daily show. It's in 2 discrete hours. So if stations want to, they can just broadcast 1 hour. Each hour is exactly 59 minutes long, starts right at the stroke of the top of the hour, goes to the 59-minute mark. The first minute of each hour we call the Billboard. And it's like a little, here's a highlight of what's coming up. So let's just open up the first Billboard in today's show. So I don't know. I'm not even sure what this. Oh, yes. Okay. From APM, American Public Media, this is Performance Today. I'm Fred Child. We are living through some unprecedented changes in the world right now. And I'm actually talking about a wonderful thing that's happening in the world of classical music. It used to be that even the best players in their teens and 20s were light years behind their older counterparts, especially when it comes to musical maturity. Well, over the past generation or so, that has changed. Coming up, yet another example of this, an extraordinary teenage pianist named Xiaoshuan Li in concert during the final round of a major competition. That's on the way in about 5 minutes, right here on PT.
Is there 1 minute? Like, how do you make sure it is 1 minute?
That was about, I don't know, like 45 or 50 seconds. And then there's a music bed underneath that.
Yeah.
So it might start with 5 seconds of music at the beginning and then maybe 5 seconds of music at the end.
Yeah.
And we'll try to pick some music that kind of matches the energy of what I'm reading.
Yeah.
So what can I do better?
Yeah, no, I can tell it's really wonderful. Because I listen to you on your website, so I can feel the similarity the way you talk. Immediately when you read that section, 50-second, it's different the way you just talk to me. When you talk to me, your vocal is much more relaxed. When you read, you're a little bit the pitch. You're more projecting. Let's put that
Yeah,
way.
a little bit more projecting.
Yeah,
Yes.
and you are more animated. You take a little bit faster or a little bit slower, so you have this rhythmic sort of a tightness or looseness. You're more dramatic when you're doing your thing. Very
Yeah,
nice.
and I have mixed feelings about that because
Mhm.
one of my there are many people I love listening to on the radio, but one is my colleague and friend Valerie Kaler, and she's another of the classical hosts at APM. And to me, on the radio, she sounds really just exactly like she does in person, and I love that. It's so personable and warm,
Mhm.
and you just feel like you're sitting having coffee with her. And sometimes I think I'm a little too much with the extra projection. Like, I'm not in a big room. I don't need to fill an auditorium. I don't need if I write it well, I don't need to over dramatize it with my voice. So
Mhm.
I could work on
No,
it.
but I like it. I like when you are just a bit of projecting, you are a bit of animated. That in
Mm,
that sense, it's not overdone. It's just a little bit more than you just have coffee with someone.
mm.
So yeah, I like it. I like it.
Well,
So yeah, I have a serious question for you. Is classical music dying?
hmm. Ching, I have a real tendency, as you have noticed over the past hour, to give long answers.
Yes.
I can answer that in one word. No.
Okay. Okay. That's good.
I can give a longer answer if you like, but
Yeah,
no,
that's
no,
good.
it's not.
So, what do you think with the social media platforms? Right now, we have all these. When I grew up, we have no social media. So it only started like maybe 2008 or 2009.
Mhm.
Um, how do you feel classical music's for the preservation and it's the development uh, in our near future with the social media? Do you think that there is actually it's good for classical music, or do you think also it's good and bad?
I think it's great. I think it's a fantastic thing. And especially the younger people in the world of classical music who are, I mean, just like we're talking about being yourself on the radio or on the air, who are themselves on their feeds, who are not hiring a publicist to talk about their latest album or their upcoming appearances, but who are just being about themselves and talking about their lives and talking about their meals and their feelings and their politics and their practicing, and who are creating these new networks. It's a new way to network, which is an absolutely crucial part of this artistic endeavor, which was hammered home by my wife Wang Ji, who's been talking especially this year about the power of collaboration in the
Hmm.
world of classical music. I mean, this is an art form that takes shape with all different kinds of collaborations. So the ability to build new networks of people who then can create ensembles and venues and collectives and critiquing partners, it's a powerful thing. I think it's fantastic. And some of my favorite things on social media are just kind of lurking and watching. Oh, well, what are the kids doing? The talented young musicians in their 20s, what are they talking about? What's important to them? What music are they listening to? Uh, that's tremendously valuable for me,
Hmm.
to just kind of keep my finger on the pulse of the musical world. I love it.
Yeah. So do you
Plus
find more? Yeah. Sorry.
performance
Plus,
videos. Wow.
yes. yeah. And I love YouTube, and it's such a incredible resource for like I can just type in any work pretty much, and I can see different orchestra play Beethoven 5 symphony in different 10 different ways. I can study all the conductors, how their tempo is, how their interpretation are. So it's just in that sense YouTube is just so awesome.
And that's a double-edged sword, Ching, I think, because it's wonderful for us viewers and listeners and people who want to listen to music. But how do musicians get paid for that, for their
Mm,
work, for their recording? We still haven't figured out an equitable business model. I
mm,
mean, the new music streaming platforms, for the most part, pay
right,
musicians either very badly or not at all.
right.
And that I don't know what the answer is to that. And we can't. We've been living in this world where a lot of people have been doing free online concerts for a few
Mm,
months. That's not
yeah,
sustainable either.
yeah,
Uh, we
yeah.
have to figure out ways that musicians get paid for their work in a way that's affordable for audiences too. And that part of the impact of social media we have not figured out.
Yeah. So how do you find these past 3 months during the COVID-19? Um, do you find more people tuning in, listen to you? Are there any statistics in that? And how do you work? You're not going to station, and how do you produce things?
Yeah, we won't know for a while. We get quarterly listener numbers. So are more people tuning in? We have some anecdotal evidence, but we won't know the hard numbers for a little while. Uh, but we're getting more response than ever before. What we're doing seems to mean more to people than it has. Getting more emails, more phone calls than ever before. And music, not purely as something comfort and distracting and beautiful and calming, but as a reflection of the emotions and feelings of the moment, is really powerful for a lot of people right now. So, are more people listening? I'm not sure yet. But among those who are listening, it seems to be a really powerful connection. As
Mhm.
to how I do it, I sit right here. I'm actually in my apartment building, though not in my personal apartment. Uh, I'm very lucky that several people who live in my building have moved elsewhere for the duration of this, however long this goes. And I've used a couple of different apartments essentially as a studio, including where I am right now. Um, this family, I wrote to them and said, hey, here's my dilemma. My apartment's kind of too small to do this. Um, and they immediately said, oh, yes, of course. You're welcome to do that. Our neighbor has the key, and here's some things to think about, and use the fridge and everything. And so, again, just extraordinarily privileged to have a space like this become available as a recording studio and essentially office during the day as well.
Mhm.
So yeah, I'm sitting on the 6th floor of an apartment building on the west side of Manhattan. I have a little thing set up here with my laptop and the microphone. I have a little recording device.
Mm.
Uh, and every day, in the morning, start my work day with recording a show and then spend most of the rest of the day writing that show, doing correspondence, thinking about with my team what we want to do next and what's coming up. So, yeah, very
Wow,
lucky to be able to produce the show. Yeah, I don't have access to the office
that's
ever
great.
since the middle of
Yeah,
March, but have
yeah,
access
yeah.
to the studio and Wi-Fi, and I'm all
That's
set.
great. Wow. Well, so thank you so much. There's a lot of information and a lot of your story. I just love it. Should we? We're almost at the wrap up time, and could we do a rapid fire with you?
Please, I'll try to shorten my answers for the rapid fire.
Yeah, rapid fire has to be rapid. Yeah, has to be short. Okay. Wow. Okay. One drink at happy hour. Which one?
Seedlip Spice. It's a new non-alcoholic thing.
Really? Non-alcohol.
And
Okay.
Lefroy 18, single malt
Okay.
Scotch.
Ooh, I see your collection of wine or your liquor. Your bar is fancy. Ice cream flavors.
Chocolate, and occasionally pistachio.
Other instruments you want to learn.
Oh, cello.
Me too. Favorite non-American food.
Hot pot.
That's American food.
Not any. No. Hot pot. Come on.
Oh, hot pot. Oh,
Hot pot.
sorry. I
Oh
thought
yeah,
hot dog.
not hot pocket. Yeah, hot pot.
Oh, hot pot. Okay, hot pot. Yeah, Korean hot pot, Chinese hot pot. How often do you do physical exercise?
Not often enough.
Once a week?
A few times a week. Should be every
Oh.
day.
That's good. A few times good. Yeah. Okay. Countries you want to be.
Countries I want to be. Oh, what an
Yeah,
interesting
you want to
question.
like short visit.
Oh, Northern Italy and the Balkans and West Africa.
You said it all. Last book you read?
Oh, I'm in the middle of reading a book about relationships by Alain de Botton.
Oh, good. Are you allowed to curse on radio?
Not on the radio, but here, Ching, you and I could curse up a blue streak right here, right now. But except that I have 35 years of training not to say any curse words in front of a microphone. So I'm not FCC regulation is still in effect for broadcast.
Yeah. Is F word your favorite curse word? Which one is your
Yes.
favorite? Okay.
Yes.
Me too. All right. Last question. Tea or coffee?
Coffee.
Yeah, I know you guys have very expensive coffee taste. Cheers.
Cheers. I finished off the coffee. There's
Oh
just
my
a little
God.
drag
Yeah.
left.
So yeah, we did well. Do you have like a question for me? One question.
Oh, I have so many questions for you. First of all, you have this beautiful background, like solid, dark blocks of color behind you with a few little things that catch the eye. Whereas I'm just kind of randomly in the living room with the kitchen pots and pans behind me. You have composed your visual space where I'm just kind of falling into it. I'm going to buy you some coffee, and so we can sit down and your brain and learn about visual production from you.
Sure, yeah. I can even give you the panel. This panel. This is a piece of paper.
Oh.
And I buy them. They're the width of my window. I think a standard window. And they came with 3 of them. So I can even give you one.
Oh, I could hang.
You can hang
somewhere. 2 of those behind me.
Yeah, I just hung on top. I use those, like a sticky thingy, I hung on top of them. It's a little bit scratchy right now. I can use another one, which is newer. And then I just put my old license plate. I stuck my old license called Media for You, over there. And top is the Andrew Yang thing. And then some pictures is already on the wall. So, and my wall is red, but it's always good to like have sort of a 2/3, 2/3 of my background right now is black and the other side is red. So I guess it's okay. I don't know. So
I learned from you is side lighting, because like right now I have sunlight over on this side, but you asked me to go get a lamp.
Yeah.
Which I put right here to give myself a little highlight from the other side. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. You look good with the a little bit light. And I am using a light here right now. This one, if I turn it off, it looks like this. It looks like this, okay? It looks like this. Yeah. It's I don't have to have it. Even if I don't turn it on, it looks okay. I turn it on.
Diffuse sunlight.
yeah, my sunlight over there, right? It's the window, but also I turn on a little bit of lamp. But sunlight color is white, is the daylight. The lamp color is a little it's called tungsten. So it's kind of for the for sort of a strict lighting theory. They don't like you to mix with these two, but I do it anyway. So
Oh,
yeah.
see, I
So
just learned something from you just now.
so anyway, yeah. So, but I do have a little maybe better camera than you are because you're using your laptop's camera, right? I bought this, what do you call webcam,
Looks
and it's
great.
called AVAYA. I don't really endorse it because I think I want to buy a better one, but it was like there's no, it's all sold out, everywhere sold out. It's called Tech something, tech,
Right.
tech something. Anyway, so this is just a substitute. Thank you. All right. So
Thank you.
thank you. Thank you. So thank you so much, guys, for watching. And let's see. We have one comment. Peter, my friend, said Fred favors the Mediterraneans. Yeah. Um, thank you guys for watching. And this video will be on my channel. By the way, um, please, for those of you, if you have not subscribed my YouTube channel name is Juhl Media. And I don't know if Fred has a YouTube channel. Do you? Or you just have
Sadly,
a
I do not. Performance Today has a channel,
yeah,
but I personally
yeah.
do not. I should.
You,
I should.
yeah.
That's something else I should learn from you.
Yeah, you should have your own channel. Yeah, you should build a YouTube channel. It's very easy. And Fred, but if you type Fred Child's name on YouTube, you will see many of his clips. Is host. The clips are hosted by the Performance Today. So he has his company YouTube. And what else? And Fred, you want to share your Facebook if people want to check you out?
Oh,
Shares,
sure. Yeah, it's
share. Yeah,
easy to find on Facebook.
just
Yeah,
Fred
Fred
Child.
Child,
Yeah.
singular, no S, just
Yeah,
CHILD. Yeah, connect with me on
yeah,
Facebook.
yeah. Anything else? Social
Be
security
well. Be well.
number. Be well. Yeah. So I just hope this whole pandemic thing will finish soon, so we can see each other. We can eat together. More fun without wearing masks.
We got to get together and have hot pot again. Come
Yeah.
on.
Yeah. Hey, Wanji is here. Hi. How are you? Thank you for watching, you guys. And
Gee, I'll be downstairs shortly.
yeah. Oh, yeah, thank you so much for watching. Thank you for joining us. Thanks for
Thank you,
your
Ching.
comments. Yeah, and thank you, Fred. And I appreciate you. And I see you very soon.
I'm honored. Thank you, Ching, for including me in your wonderful series. I think I'm 18th in your conversation series. I can't wait to see and hear who you have next.
Yes.
And you're doing great,
Oh,
great work.
sorry.
Thank you for including me.
Thank you. Thank you. By the way, just add one more thing. On Wednesday, my guest will be George uh, Colligan, who is a jazz musician from your hometown, Fred, from Portland, Oregon.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah, he teaches in Oregon State,
Mm.
and he's a fantastic jazz pianist. He almost reminds me of this white pianist, the jazz player. What's his name? Um, oh, escaped me. What's his name? Chick
Chick
Corea.
Corea.
Yeah,
Ooh,
he's almost as good as Chick Corea.
that's high praise.
Yeah, and Monday, I have a guest. He's a specialist. His name is called Carl Widerquest. He is a universal basic income specialist.
Mm.
He's a professor. All right.
Mm.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ching.
Thank you. Thank you. All
Be
right.
well.
We're gonna end. Yeah.
Okay.
Bye bye. Bye
Bye-bye.
everyone.
Bye-bye.
You just